We often think of narcissism as arrogance, vanity, or selfishness. Yet Carl Jung would remind us that narcissism is not merely a personality flaw. It is a profound disorder of the soul. To meet a narcissist is to encounter a person whose ego has swollen like a mask, blocking them from their deeper self. Behind the mask lies fragility, emptiness, and a hunger so desperate that it consumes not only the narcissist, but also those who come too close. Why is it so dangerous? Because the narcissist feeds on the energy of others. They cannot face their own inner void, so they draw life from the people around them: attention, admiration, even conflict. Like a parasite of the psyche, they seek to dominate, manipulate, and drain. To ignore the red flags is to risk being pulled into their orbit, losing your own sense of identity and worth. Jung believed that what we do not recognize in others often reflects something unacknowledged in ourselves. That is why narcissists are so alluring. They awaken projections, fantasies, and unconscious desires. Yet to awaken without awareness is to fall prey to their manipulations. To protect yourself, you must learn to see clearly, to name the red flags before they devour your spirit. Success in life is not simply about ambition, wealth, or relationships. It is about preserving your soul. And if you allow a narcissist unchecked access to your life, your soul will pay the price. Thus, we must awaken to the signs, not with fear, but with clarity. For knowledge is the shield, and awareness is the cure. Charm is the first mask of the narcissist. When you meet them, you often feel as though you've encountered someone extraordinary, confident, radiant, magnetic. They know how to draw attention, how to speak in ways that make you feel seen, and how to mirror back your own desires as if they were theirs. This initial stage is what makes them so dangerous. They appear as the answer to your unspoken needs, whether for love, admiration, guidance, or companionship. It is here that most people fall because the charm feels authentic, almost intoxicating. But Carl Jung would remind us that the mask is not the face. The persona, the social mask each of us wears, becomes, in the case of the narcissist, a perfected weapon. Their charm is not a reflection of their authentic self, but a performance crafted to hook others into their orbit. Jung often warned against confusing the persona with the true being, and nowhere is this confusion more destructive than in relationships with narcissists. The mask shines so brightly that it blinds us to the emptiness beneath. The charm works because it resonates with something inside us. Jung believed that relationships often awaken projections, images of our inner needs, desires, and ideals that we unconsciously place onto others. The narcissist's mask is so well polished that it invites projection. You may see in them the friend you always wanted, the lover you dreamed of, or the mentor you lacked. But in truth, what you see is not them. It is a reflection of your own psyche, captured and manipulated by their performance. This is why the initial attraction feels uncanny, almost fated. Yet what feels like destiny is often only a trap. The danger of this charm is that it bypasses rational evaluation. Instead of questioning their intentions, you are swept up in the glow of their attention. They flatter, they validate, they create a sense of specialness. For a time, you may feel uplifted, more alive than before, because they reflect back to you a grander image of yourself. But this is not true recognition. It is bait. As Jung would note, what begins as enchantment soon turns into possession, not in the literal sense, but in the psychological one. You begin to orbit their light, not realizing it is borrowed and temporary. If ignored, this red flag leads to dependency. You become invested in the image they present, believing that if you keep close to them, the feeling of being seen, validated, or uplifted will last. But it cannot, because the mask is unsustainable. Once the narcissist senses they have secured your loyalty, the charm begins to fade, replaced by control, criticism, or indifference. What once felt like a gift becomes a weapon. The lesson, then, is not to distrust charm entirely, but to look beneath it. Jung urged us to see beyond the mask, to ask, Is this person's outer glow supported by inner depth? Do their actions match their words when the stage lights are off? If not, the charm is only a persona, and behind it may lie the hunger of a narcissist. To fall for the mask is to risk losing yourself. To see beyond it is the first act of freedom. The cycle of idealization and devaluation is one of the most insidious patterns in the narcissist's behavior. It begins innocently enough, often with overwhelming positivity. When you first enter their orbit, they may treat you as though you are the most important person in the world. They shower you with admiration, attention, and validation. This is the stage Jung might describe as archetypal projection. You are cast as the hero, the savior, or the soulmate in their inner drama. For a time, you feel elevated, almost transcendent, as though you have finally found the connection or recognition you have always longed for. But this idealization is not about you. It is not a reflection of who you truly are, but of what the narcissist needs you to be. They do not see you in your full humanity, your flaws, your complexities, your depth. They see only an image, a projection of their fantasy, a mask they drape over you just as they wear their own. This is why the attention feels intoxicating but strangely hollow, as if it is too much, too soon, too perfectly scripted. Deep down, something feels artificial, though it is difficult to name at first. The danger lies in how deeply this stage hooks you. The idealization convinces you that you are special, chosen, even irreplaceable. And because human beings long to be seen and valued, you may invest yourself emotionally, giving your trust and vulnerability freely. It feels like love, but it is closer to possession. Jung would caution here that we must not confuse projection with reality. What the narcissist offers is not genuine recognition, but a mirror reflecting what you wish to see. Then comes the shift, the devaluation. Once they believe they have secured your loyalty, the mask begins to slip. The compliments turn into criticisms, the warmth into coldness, the attention into neglect. Suddenly, you are no longer the hero or the savior. You are flawed, disappointing, not enough. The very qualities they once praised may now be used against you. This reversal creates profound confusion because you have tasted their idealization and now feel desperate to return to it. You may find yourself trying harder, giving more, sacrificing your own boundaries, all in an effort to win back the approval that once flowed so freely. This cycle is not accidental. It is a form of psychological control. By alternating between extremes, exalting and then demeaning, the narcissist destabilizes your sense of self. You begin to doubt your own worth, relying more and more on their shifting judgments to define you. It is a subtle form of conditioning, a push-and pull that keeps you trapped in their orbit. Jung would frame this as a destructive projection dynamic. The narcissist cannot integrate their own inner contradictions, so they cast them onto others. In the idealization stage, they project their longing for perfection onto you. In the devaluation stage, they project their shadow, their disappointment, fear, and self-loathing. You become both their fantasy and their scapegoat, depending on which aspect of their psyche dominates in the moment. To ignore this red flag is to step into a spiral that erodes your sense of identity. You begin to live not from your own truth, but from their shifting perception. Real love does not swing between extremes of worship and disdain. Real recognition sees both light and shadow and still accepts you. The narcissist cannot offer this because they cannot accept their own. The key is to notice the pattern early, the too intense praise, the sudden withdrawal, the instability masked as passion. When you recognize the cycle, you reclaim your power, for once you see the game, you no longer have to play it. A lack of empathy is one of the clearest and most dangerous red flags of a narcissist. At first, it may not be obvious. They can mimic empathy, offering the right words or gestures in social situations, but this imitation lacks depth. Real empathy requires the ability to step outside the confines of the ego, to feel with another, to recognize their humanity. The narcissist, however, is trapped within the prison of their own inflated self-image. Everything is filtered through the question, how does this serve me? What they call care is often only strategy. What looks like compassion is often performance. Carl Jung understood empathy as an essential function of relatedness, the ability to connect with others beyond mere appearances. Without it, relationships cannot reach authenticity. They remain superficial, transactional, utilitarian. And that is precisely how the narcissist relates to them. People are not seen as full beings with inner depth, but as objects with roles: admirer, rescuer, servant, or competitor. You are valued only to the extent that you satisfy their needs. Your emotions, struggles, and joys are secondary, sometimes even irrelevant. The absence of empathy reveals itself slowly, like cracks in the mask. When you are in pain, they may offer little comfort or quickly redirect the conversation back to themselves. When you succeed, they may appear supportive at first, but soon grow resentful. Feeling your success threatens their fragile sense of superiority. When you express vulnerability, instead of meeting you with gentleness, they may exploit it later as a weapon. Over time, you realize that your inner world is invisible to them unless it serves their agenda. Jung might frame this absence of empathy as a failure of individuation. A narcissist cannot accept their own vulnerability, shadow, or imperfection, and therefore cannot recognize it in others. They are cut off from the deeper layers of the psyche, stuck in identification with the persona, the glittering mask of charm and confidence. Because they cannot face their own suffering, they are blind to yours. Their inability to empathize is not merely a character flaw. It is evidence of a profound disconnection from the soul. The danger of ignoring this red flag is immense. Human beings need empathy to thrive. It is through empathy that we feel safe, seen, and connected. Without it, a relationship becomes an endless negotiation for validation, a performance of closeness with no real intimacy. You may find yourself constantly explaining your feelings, hoping for understanding that never comes, or twisting yourself into someone else's image just to keep their approval. This erodes your sense of worth and leaves you feeling unseen, even while standing right beside them. Real empathy, Jung would say, emerges when we embrace our own shadow, when we acknowledge our own suffering and imperfections. That is why the narcissist cannot sustain it. They deny their own depth and thus deny yours. To expect empathy from them is like drawing water from an empty well. No matter how often you return, you will always come back thirsty. Recognizing this lack of empathy is not an act of judgment, but of clarity. It reminds you that you deserve relationships where your inner life matters, where your feelings are not dismissed, but honored. To ignore this red flag is to accept a relationship built on illusion. To see it is to take the first step toward protecting your soul. Control through manipulation is one of the most destructive tools in a narcissist's arsenal, and it is often the reason why so many people remain trapped in relationships with them long after the harm has begun. At the heart of narcissism lies a deep insecurity, a fear of losing control, and a fragile ego that cannot bear vulnerability. To maintain their sense of superiority, the narcissist must dominate those around them, not necessarily with physical force, but with psychological tactics that erode confidence and reshape reality. Gaslighting is one of the most common of these tactics. It involves twisting facts, denying events, or reframing situations until you begin to question your own perception. You may remember something clearly, but they insist it never happened. You may feel hurt by their words, but they claim you are too sensitive or imagining things. Over time, this creates deep confusion. You begin to doubt not only your memory, but your judgment and even your sanity. Jung would call this a severing of the connection between consciousness and truth. Your inner knowing is slowly dismantled by the constant distortion imposed by the narcissist. Another weapon is guilt tripping. The narcissist subtly or overtly convinces you that their unhappiness is your fault. If they are angry, it is because you provoked them. If they withdraw, it is because you failed to meet their needs. If they mistreat you, they may argue that it was your behavior that made them do it. This inversion of responsibility keeps you trapped in a cycle of self-blame, constantly trying to repair what was never yours to fix. In Jungian terms, this dynamic forces you to carry the narcissist's shadow. They project onto you the qualities they cannot accept in themselves, and you, unaware of the mechanism, begin to internalize their darkness as your own burden. Reality twisting is another hallmark of manipulation. The narcissist is skilled at reframing stories in their favor, painting themselves as the victim even when they are the aggressor. They may rewrite history, distort conversations, or emphasize selective details until you are unsure of what truly happened. The aim is not only to confuse you, but to make you dependent on their version of reality. If you cannot trust your own perception, you are forced to rely on theirs. This is how control is cemented, not through chains but through narrative. The danger of ignoring this red flag is profound. Manipulation does not simply control your actions, it colonizes your mind. You may find yourself defending them to others, rationalizing their behavior, or silencing your own instincts to preserve the fragile peace. The longer this dynamic continues, the more you lose touch with your authentic self. Jung would argue that such manipulation severs the individuation process, cutting you off from the inner guidance of the psyche. Instead of becoming more whole, you become fragmented, living in a reality defined by another's distortion. To resist this control, you must anchor yourself in truth, your truth. That means trusting your perceptions, honoring your feelings, and refusing to take responsibility for what is not yours. It may require distance or even separation, because a narcissist rarely relinquishes control willingly. Recognizing manipulation for what it is becomes an act of liberation, a reclaiming of the inner voice that has been silenced. The lesson here is stark. Love does not manipulate, and truth does not require distortion. Where there is constant gaslighting, guilt, tripping, and reality twisting, there cannot be authentic connection. To ignore this red flag is to risk losing your grip on reality itself. To see it clearly is to step back into your own power, guided not by the narcissist's illusion, but by the integrity of your own soul. Projection of the shadow is one of the most deceptive and psychologically draining tactics a narcissist uses, and it is deeply rooted in what Carl Jung identified as the shadow archetype, the hidden, disowned parts of the self. Jung taught that every individual carries within them qualities they would rather not acknowledge: anger, envy, selfishness, weakness, insecurity. For a healthy psyche, the task is to face and integrate these shadow aspects, to admit they exist and to work with them. But the narcissist cannot do this. Their inflated ego refuses to admit imperfection. To preserve their fragile sense of superiority, they deny their own flaws and cast them onto others. You, then, become the container for their darkness. This projection often begins subtly. The narcissist may accuse you of being selfish when, in truth, it is their own self-centeredness dominating the relationship. They may call you manipulative when they themselves are twisting reality to suit their needs. They may even frame you as untrustworthy, while they are the ones betraying trust. Over time, you may find yourself internalizing these accusations, wondering, am I the problem? Am I truly what they say I am? This erosion of self-perception is the very aim of shadow projection. It keeps the narcissist protected from their own inner confrontation by making you carry the weight of what belongs to them. Jung described projection as an unconscious defense mechanism. What is unbearable within ourselves is seen out there, in others. For most people, projections can be recognized and withdrawn through reflection. But for the narcissist, projection becomes a way of life. They are unwilling to look within, so they continually expel their shadow onto those around them. You, especially if you are empathetic, may become the perfect canvas for this process, absorbing their accusations and trying to prove your innocence. In this way, their shadow becomes your burden. The danger of ignoring this red flag is profound. By accepting their projections as truth, you lose contact with your authentic self. You begin to fight battles that are not yours, defending yourself against distortions that have nothing to do with who you truly are. Worse still, you may even suppress your real feelings to avoid further blame, becoming smaller and quieter to escape the next projection. In Jungian terms, this entangles you in their unresolved psyche. You become a character in their unconscious drama rather than living your own life. Projection also creates a vicious cycle. Because the narcissist cannot face their own flaws, they need someone to carry them. The more you resist, the more they double down, desperate to maintain their illusion of superiority. The relationship then becomes a constant battlefield where your identity is attacked, reshaped, and diminished. What should be a space of mutual growth and authenticity turns into a theater of shadows, where the narcissist plays the role of the blameless and you, unjustly, play the villain. The way to break free is through awareness. Jung emphasized that the moment you recognize a projection as projection, it loses its power. If you can step back and say, "This accusation is not about me, it is about them," you begin to reclaim your clarity. This does not mean confronting the narcissist in hopes of change. Rarely will they accept responsibility, but it means no longer internalizing what is not yours. By refusing to carry their shadow, you protect your soul and continue your own path toward individuation. To ignore this red flag is to drown in someone else's darkness. To see it clearly is to remember that their shadow belongs to them, not to you. Your task is not to live under their projections, but to live in the light of your own truth. The endless hunger for validation is one of the clearest signs of a narcissist, and it is also one of the most exhausting dynamics for anyone who becomes entangled with them. On the surface, a narcissist may appear confident, even overflowing with self-assurance. They charm, they boast, they draw attention, but beneath this facade lies a fragile core that constantly seeks affirmation from the outside world. Their sense of worth does not come from within, it is borrowed from the admiration, attention, and approval of others. Carl Jung would say this points to a failure of individuation, the inability to develop an inner source of meaning and strength, leaving the person forever dependent on external reflections. At first, you may not recognize this hunger as destructive. Many narcissists are magnetic and engaging, and it feels flattering to be the one they focus on. They may shower you with attention, praise, or affection, not necessarily because they see you as you are, but because your admiration feeds their ego. Yet soon you discover that no matter how much love or reassurance you give, it is never enough. Compliments fade quickly, loyalty is taken for granted, and achievements are dismissed unless they are celebrated in ways that make the narcissist feel superior. It is as though you are pouring water into a bottomless vessel. This insatiable need for validation often becomes manipulative. A narcissist may test your devotion by creating scenarios that force you to prove your loyalty. They may provoke jealousy, withdraw affection, or subtly undermine your confidence so that you seek their approval even more desperately. Each time you reassure them, you temporarily soothe their insecurity, but in doing so, you also strengthen their dependence on your validation. The relationship begins to revolve around their constant need to be seen, admired, and affirmed, while your own needs remain unacknowledged. Jung would interpret this hunger as the result of an ego that has not integrated with the deeper self. Instead of drawing strength from within, from the unconscious, from the wholeness of the psyche, the narcissist clings to surface-level affirmations. This is why their hunger can never be satisfied. External validation cannot fill the void left by a neglected soul. It is like trying to heal an inner wound with applause it soothes for a moment, but never addresses the deeper fracture. The danger of ignoring this red flag is that you may lose yourself in the endless task of feeding their need. You may spend years trying to reassure them, trying to give enough love to heal their wounds, only to discover that nothing changes. The more you give, the more they demand. Your own sense of worth may erode, as you become conditioned to measure your value by how well you keep them satisfied. In the process, your individuality is sacrificed at the altar of their emptiness. It is crucial to recognize that this hunger is not yours to satisfy. No amount of love, patience, or validation can heal what they refuse to confront within themselves. The narcissist's endless hunger is a symptom of their refusal to face their shadow, their insecurity, and their disconnection from the deeper self. Jung would remind us that wholeness requires turning inward, not outward. Until they do this, their void will remain, and you will be caught in a cycle of giving without end. To see this red flag clearly is to remember that true love is reciprocal. It is not about endlessly feeding another's ego, but about nurturing mutual growth, authenticity, and respect. Ignoring this sign means being consumed by someone's bottomless need. Acknowledging it means reclaiming your right to relationships where love flows both ways, and where validation is not demanded as a lifeline, but offered freely as part of genuine connection. The illusion of change is perhaps one of the most dangerous and heartbreaking red flags when dealing with a narcissist, because it preys directly on your hope. Hope is powerful. It is what keeps people enduring hardship, what makes them believe that love can heal, and what encourages patience in relationships. A narcissist understands this, even if unconsciously, and they use it to keep you tied to them. They promise change. They show small gestures of improvement. They speak the words you have longed to hear. But these are not born from genuine transformation. They are performances, temporary adjustments meant to keep you invested while the underlying patterns remain untouched. At times, these moments of change can feel incredibly convincing. After a period of conflict or abuse, the narcissist may suddenly become attentive, apologetic, or affectionate. They may even acknowledge their faults, using just enough vulnerability to disarm you. But what Jung would point out is that real transformation requires a confrontation with the shadow, a deep and uncomfortable process of self-examination. The narcissist avoids this at all costs. Instead, they offer the mask of change, a surface-level act designed to restore control and reset the cycle of dependency. This illusion works because it taps into your empathy and your belief in growth. You want to believe they can change. You want to believe that the person you once loved, the charming, attentive version, can be real again. So when they show even a flicker of that behavior, you interpret it as progress. Yet, with time, the same destructive patterns resurface. The manipulation, the lack of empathy, the hunger for validation, the projections. The change was never about growth. It was about preservation of control. The danger here is that you become trapped in a cycle. Each time you are ready to walk away or set boundaries, they offer a glimpse of hope that things will be different. You forgive, you stay, you compromise. And then the cycle begins again. Jung might describe this as falling under the spell of an archetype, where the illusion clouds your perception and binds you to a repeating pattern. The narcissist becomes both the wounder and the healer, creating the very pain they later pretend to soothe. True change, Jung would remind us, involves deep inner work, facing the unconscious, acknowledging the shadow, integrating the denied parts of oneself, and striving for wholeness. For the narcissist, this would mean admitting their flaws, recognizing their destructive behaviors, and doing the painful work of transformation. But because their entire identity is built on denial of imperfection, genuine change is almost impossible without a radical awakening. Instead, what they offer is a counterfeit version of growth, words without substance, gestures without consistency. To ignore this red flag is to live in perpetual waiting, always hoping tomorrow will bring the change that never arrives. It keeps you emotionally invested in a fantasy, rather than seeing the reality before you. This is perhaps why relationships with narcissists can stretch on for years. The promise of change acts like a tether, keeping you bound to someone who has no true intention of evolving. The way forward is to see the illusion for what it is. When words and actions do not align consistently over time, there is no real growth. Temporary kindness after cruelty is not love, it is manipulation. Promises without sustained effort are not transformation, they are strategies to prolong control. Recognizing this allows you to reclaim your clarity, your power, and your future. In the end, the illusion of change is not change at all. It is the final mask a narcissist wears to keep you from walking away. To see through this mask is to step into reality, and to choose your own healing over their endless performance.